The Smiler in the Dark, the Clown Statue. The October rain in Newport wasn't like summer showers. It was cold, relentless, and carried the sharp, salty bite of the ocean, slapping against the windshield of Sarah's old Toyota, as if trying to force her to turn back. But Sarah couldn't turn back. Next semester's college tuition was weighing heavily on her, and tonight's babysitting job at the Richardson Mansion promised generous pay, enough to keep her comfortable for the next 2 weeks. The Richardson house stood isolated on a hill overlooking the cliffs, far from the bustling residential area down in town. It was a massive Victorian structure, with sharp spires piercing the gray sky and walls of red brick faded to a mossy hue over time. As Sarah parked in front of the large iron gate, a chill ran down her spine, not from the rain's cold, but from feeling small and exposed before the eerie grandeur of the house. Mr. and Mrs. Richardson greeted her at the front door. They were a middle-aged couple who exuded wealth and politeness, though they seemed in a hurry. Mrs. Richardson, in an elegant black velvet evening gown, smiled reassuringly at Sarah. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, dear. The kids, Jack and Emma, are already fast asleep upstairs. They're good kids, they probably won't wake up at all." Mr. Richardson adjusted his cufflinks as he added, "There's food in the fridge, help yourself. The cable TV in the den downstairs has every channel. We'll be late, probably around 2 a.m. If anything urgent comes up, call my cell. The number's on the fridge." After a few pleasantries, their luxury car rolled away, disappearing behind the rain and the heavy iron gate. The front door closed with a dry click. Silence immediately enveloped the space, heavy as a lead blanket. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to shake off the queasy feeling. "It's just a big house," she told herself. "You'll be fine, Sarah. $200 for a few hours of TV. Piece of cake." She did a quick check of the ground floor windows, all locked tight. The aged oak floors creaked under every step, the sound echoing down the long hallway. The house was decorated in classic style, with oil paintings of the Richardson ancestors, stern men with thick beards and women with melancholy eyes. Once she was sure everything was secure, Sarah entered the den, the room Mr. Richardson had pointed at. It was ridiculously spacious compared to her cramped student apartment. A large, unlit marble fireplace dominated the north wall. In the center was a dark brown leather sofa facing a huge flat-screen TV. The other 3 walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with old leather-bound volumes. Sarah sank into the sofa, turned on the TV, and flipped to a reality show to drown out the oppressive quiet. The blue glow from the screen cast strange dancing shadows across the room's furnishings. She pulled out her textbooks to study, but a vague unease kept creeping in, the feeling that she wasn't alone. Sarah looked up and scanned the large room. That's when she saw it. In the farthest corner, where the TV light barely reached, stood something large. Sarah squinted. It was a statue, a life-sized clown statue. It sat on an old wooden chair, hands neatly folded in its lap, head slightly bowed, but its eyes stared straight ahead, directly at the sofa where Sarah sat. Sarah wasn't afraid of clowns. She'd never had coulrophobia, but there was something deeply wrong about this figure. It wasn't a friendly Ronald McDonald type or a colorful circus clown. It had the style of a 19th century clown, grotesque and sinister. Its costume was made of tattered silk, a mix of faded yellow and deep purple patches. The ruffled collar hung limply over its shoulders. But the face was the worst. The white paint was cracked and mottled, revealing the dull gray plaster or porcelain beneath. Its lips were painted in a bright red grin that stretched unnaturally past the ears, exposing fake yellowed teeth. And the eyes. Glassy, pale blue eyes, lifeless, yet reflecting the TV light in a way that made them seem wet, alive.
Rich people have weird taste, Sarah muttered, trying to calm herself. She turned back to her art history textbook, forcing herself to focus. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The hallway grandfather clock ticked steadily, as if counting down the seconds of her growing fear. 15 minutes passed. Sarah couldn't read a single word. The back of her neck burned. Some primal survival instinct screamed that eyes were staring at her from behind. She whipped around. The clown statue was still there, motionless, the red grin still stretched ear to ear. But had its head tilted slightly to the left? "You're being paranoid, Sarah," she laughed at herself, though the laugh sounded forced. She stood to get some water. Passing the corner on her way to the door, she had to walk closer to the statue. A musty smell of damp fabric rose from it, making her nauseous. When Sarah returned with a glass of water, she decided not to sit on the sofa anymore. She dragged a stool closer to the TV, turning her back completely to the corner. She turned the volume up to drown out the rain and the howling wind outside. But the presence behind her was overwhelming. It weighed on her mind like a boulder. Sarah started imagining things, the rustle of silk fabric, the creak of the old wooden chair shifting, that red grin slowly widening into a mouth full of sharp teeth. Irrational fear turned into real panic. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't stay in this room another second with that demonic thing staring at the back of her head. She grabbed her phone. It was only 10:30 p.m., far too early for the Richardsons to return, but she needed to do something to ease the terror. She decided to call the kid's father. At the very least, asking permission to cover the thing would make her feel less rude. The phone rang with long, drawn-out tones. "Hello?" Mr. Richardson's voice came through, mixed with loud party music in the background. "Hi, Mr. Richardson, it's Sarah." Her voice trembled slightly. "What's wrong, Sarah? Are the kids awake?" His tone immediately turned worried. No, Sarah hurried to explain. "The kids are sleeping fine. Everything's okay. I'm sorry to bother you with something so silly." Sarah hesitated, glancing over her shoulder toward the corner. The statue sat there, shrouded in dim shadow. "Go ahead, Sarah. I'm listening." "Okay, I'm in the den downstairs watching TV, but honestly, that clown statue in the corner is kind of freaking me out. It keeps staring at me. Would you mind if I threw a blanket or sheet over it until you get home? I promise I'll clean everything up before I leave." The other end went dead silent. Even the party music seemed muffled. "Mr. Richardson? Are you still there?" Sarah asked, twisting the sleeve of her sweater tightly around her finger. The silence stretched a few more seconds, heavy enough that she could hear his rapid breathing. "Sarah," Mr. Richardson's voice returned, but it was different now, low, hoarse, trembling, stripped of all earlier politeness.
"Sarah, listen to me. Put the phone down. Run upstairs right now. Grab Jack and Emma and lock yourselves in a room. Call 911 immediately." "What? What are you—" Sarah stammered, her heart stopping. "Run! We don't have any clown statue. We've never had a clown statue." The phone slipped from Sarah's hand, hitting the wooden floor with a dull thud. Time froze. The blood in her veins turned to ice. Every cell in her body screamed one command, "Run!" But her legs felt nailed to the floor. Slowly, very slowly, like a puppet on strings, Sarah turned her head toward the dark corner. The wooden chair was empty. There was no statue. A bone-chilling breath brushed the back of her neck, not from the AC, not from a drafty window, but from right behind her. A foul stench filled her nose, stale sweat, rotting fabric, and the smell of death. Sarah heard the rustle of silk right next to her ear, then a raspy, grating voice, like two stones grinding together, shattered the house's silence. "You were gonna cover me with a blanket." Sarah screamed, a throat-tearing scream. She didn't dare look back. Pure survival instinct took over. She bolted toward the stairs like an arrow. Her feet barely touched the ground. She just ran, fleeing the rancid breath on her neck. Heavy footsteps thundered behind her, fast, not normal human steps, but the slap of oversized shoes. "Jack! Emma!" Sarah yelled as she reached the second floor. She picked open the kids' bedroom door. The two children jolted awake, screaming in terror. "Get up! Come with me!" Sarah had no time to explain. She scooped Jack under one arm, grabbed Emma with the other, and dragged them from their beds. Giggly laughter echoed up the stairs. Hee hee hee, hee hee hee! A wild, maniacal cackle. The footsteps reached the second-floor hallway. Sarah raced to the master bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the thickest oak door. She shoved the kids inside, slammed the door, and locked it. She dragged the heavy dresser in front of it. Boom! A massive force slammed into the door, making it shudder. The kids wailed. Sarah hugged them tightly, covering their mouths, tears streaming down her face. Boom! Boom! "Open the door, sweetie. Let's play hide and seek." The voice came from right outside, sickeningly sweet. Sarah's shaking hands pulled the spare phone from her pocket. She nearly dropped it again. She dialed 911. "Help me! There's someone in the house! He's trying to break in! 128 High Cliff Road! Please hurry!" Sarah screamed into the phone, her cries mixing with the splintering wood as the monster outside battered the door. Click, click. The lock began to give. He was prying it with an axe or something. A crack appeared. Through the splintered wood, Sarah saw an eye, a pale blue, lifeless eye surrounded by cracked white makeup. It darted around, then fixed on her. "Found you." Police sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the stormy night, the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. The pounding stopped abruptly. Silence returned, more terrifying than the noise. "Is he gone?" Sarah wondered, still clutching the children. She heard the hallway window shatter, footsteps thundering across the roof, then vanishing into the rain. 3 minutes later, police stormed the house. They found Sarah and the two children huddled in the corner of the bedroom, still trembling, unable to speak. When they searched the house, they found no one. The intruder had escaped through a second-floor window. But in the den, on the wooden chair where the statue had sat, they found evidence. A ratty orange wig shedding dirty nylon strands, an empty container of theatrical makeup, and a sharp butcher knife hidden under the sofa cushion right where Sarah had been sitting and watching TV for over an hour. The police chief told Sarah the intruder wasn't a ghost or monster. He was an escaped psychiatric inmate from a state facility 30 miles away, known as the Wandering Clown, a criminal who broke into mansions, disguised himself as a statue, and patiently waited for victims to walk into his trap. He loved watching them up close, reveling in their ignorance before striking. Sarah stared past the officer's shoulder at the empty chair. She shuddered, remembering the chill on her neck. He had been there. He had sat there the whole time she was in the room. He had watched her study. He had watched her watch TV. He had listened to every breath she took. And if she hadn't made that call, if she had simply stood up and draped a blanket over his head, the last thing she would ever have seen was that ear-to-ear red grin right before the knife plunged into her heart. Even now, years later, whenever Sarah sees a clown, on TV or at a circus, a wave of nausea rises in her throat, and she never, ever turns her back on a statue again. Because she knows that sometimes the things that stand motionless in the dark are smiling at you.